Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to my channel. Today, inshallah, we will have a new video with A Tale of Two Cities, Chapter 2. The title of the chapter is Recalled to Life. Let's start with the summary of the chapter. Saint-Antoine in Paris was a poor part where poor people lived in run-down houses. Run-down houses means very poor and low houses, and suffered from hunger, poverty, sickness, and misery. The ragged people were filled with hatred towards the wealthy and noble classes of Paris, who never cared for their misery. Therefore, Saint-Antoine was rapidly becoming a center of unrest. It happened one day that a large cask of wine dropped from a cart, and the wine spilled everywhere. The miserable people ran to drink the wine that was mixed with mud. The red wine made the street look as if it was stained with blood. The owner of the wine shop, Ernest Devarge, a fierce-looking, dark-haired man of about 30, was watching the people drinking the muddy wine when he said, "It's not my problem. Let the people from the market bring another cask. It's their fault." Teresa Devarge. This is one of the main characters of the story, and she is the wife of Mr. or Monsieur Devarge. Teresa Devarge, his wife, was a rather fat woman of about his age. Her hands were always busy knitting. However, she had watchful eyes that seemed to look at nothing. The wine shop. Mrs. Devarge looked up from her seat behind the counter in the wine shop. When her husband entered, she gave her husband a signal that he should notice the elderly gentleman and the young lady, Laurie and Lucy. They came, Lucy and Mr. Laurie came to see and take Dr. Manette to take him to London. We're sitting at a corner table. Laurie and Lucy, who were sitting at a corner table. Mr. Laurie went to the counter and spoke softly with Devarge. Mr. Laurie, Devarge, and Miss Manette went out of the shop. The three of them climbed a set of a narrow winding staircase to a small room at the top of the building, an attic. Lucy Manette looked anxious, but Mr. Laurie held her hand to comfort her, saying, "Come, child, we're going to see your father." Commentary. The scene of the wine cask. The scene is a symbol of the miserable life in France at the time. The scene has a double meaning. It shows that the oppressed people have reached the climax of their anger. The wine that stained the street with a bloody red color predicts the real blood that would stain the streets of France during the Revolution. The wine shop, it's the place where the rebellious people meet to discuss their suffering and plan for their revolution. against the noblemen. And before we start with questions and answer, I'd like to show you a part of the movie that shows the wine cask scene. Let's see.
What are you doing? Do you want to go to a mag hospital? Move on.
Yeah.
Monsieur Lolly,
Indeed.
the lodging you wish to see is on the second floor. If
As you see, my students, the wine cask, the people were running to drink the wine that mixed with mud. Let's see questions and answers. Question number 1. Describe the conditions of people in Saint-Antoine, giving example of their misery. Saint-Antoine in Paris was a poor place where poor people lived in hunger, poverty, sickness, and misery. The streets were dirty. People lived like animals. The scene of the wine cask shows how far people were poor and suffering. They gathered around to drink a mixture of mud and wine when the cask broke, as you have seen in the scene that I have displayed from the movie. The ragged people were filled with hatred toward the wealthy and noble classes of Paris. Why were these people filled with hatred? They were filled with hatred against the nobles because they cared nothing for their misery and poverty. What would that feeling of hatred lead to? This feeling of hatred would make Saint-Antoine a center of unrest, which would soon become a bloody revolution in France. Question number 3. What happened when the wine cask dropped from the cart? The wine spilled on the rough stones in the street. All the people stopped what they were doing and ran over to drink the wine that was mixed with mud. How did the people drink the wine that was spilled on the street? Some knelt down and sipped every drop that could gather in their hands. Others licked the wine from the stones. Mothers dipped rags into the wine and squeezed drops into their children's mouth. Come, child, we are going to see your father. This is a quotation from the original text. And you have to comment on that quotation. Come, child, we are going to see your father. Comment. Mr. Lorry said this to Lucy when they were about to see Dr. Manette. Lucy was trembling with fear because she was about to see the wreck of her father. Mr. Lorry comforted her that it would soon be over. The wine stains left the streets looking blood-stained. Discuss. The scene of the wine cask is a symbol from Charles Dickens on the miserable life in France at that time. The scene has a double meaning. Number one, it shows how poor the life of the lower classes in France was. Number two, it also predicts the real blood that would stain the streets of France during the revolution. And as you have seen in the scene that I have displayed from the movie, one of the people, actually, he was called Gaspard, wrote blood on the wall. And we saw that Monsieur Devarge tried to prevent him. Describe Teresa Devarge. Therese Devarge, she was the wife of the owner of the wine shop, of course, Ernest Devarge. She was a watchful woman whose hands were always busy knitting. Her eyes seemed to look at nothing. However, she seldom left anything unnoticed. The last question, and he is in the same exact state he was in when his friends asked if I would risk taking him in and not breathe a word about the matter to anyone. Comment. Ernest Devarge said this to Mr. Lorry when the latter asked if Dr. Manette was alone in the room. Monsieur Devarge explained that the man was in the same state he was in when he left the prison, and Devarge risked taking him into his house because at that time the people who put Dr. Manette in prison are still ruling the country. So if they heard or if they had any information that Dr. Manette was released out of prison, they would take him back to prison, and those who helped him would also be sent to prison. Thanks for watching. Thank you for being with me till we meet again in chapter 3. I hope you the best of luck. Thank you very much. Don't forget to put like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.